All right. Good morning, GPAR. This is Matt Braden from the GPAR professional staff. Even though my name says Brittany Baker Shore, trading spaces this morning and names. Technology is awesome. But anyway, we'll work that out. So glad to have so many people here with us for this morning's coffee talk. But before we get into today's conversation, just a few things. We have some realtor safety webinars that are going on. Please check your email. I know we've sent out a few about those opportunities from PAR and NAR. September is Realtor Safety Month, but obviously you practice safety all year long and every single day. So these are really good opportunities to get some refreshers about how to safeguard yourself, the work that you do, the clients that you serve. So it touches on a whole bunch of different stuff. So we invite you and encourage you to attend one of those safety webinars. Also, too, I'd like to just take a moment right now to reflect and to think about what today is. Today is September 11th, one of the great tragedies and saddest days in our country's history. So if we could just take a moment right now, just be quiet for a second to think about what today means and what happened to our country on this date back in 2001. All right, thank you so much. With that, good morning, Chris. Welcome to Coffee Talk.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And have the great pleasure of welcoming Councilmember Isaiah Thomas to our coffee talk. So welcome, Councilmember Thomas. I just was going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What section of the city do you call home? And what you did before city council and what actually made you want to run for city council? What motivated you there?
Good morning, everybody. So a little bit about myself. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, what made me want to run, and of course, where I live. So I'm Councilmember Isaiah Thomas. I'm actually born and raised in the northwest section of the city of Philadelphia, where I still live with my family. You hear somebody in the background, that's my wife. We have three amazing children who are the apple of my eye. I've lived in this neighborhood my entire life. I'm a product of the school district of Philadelphia. So if you're from Philly, you know, you gotta like name your schools. So I went to Elwood, Conwell, Frankfurt. I got an undergrad degree from Penn State University. My master's degree is in education from Lincoln University. Prior to getting on city council, I spent most of my professional career working with young people. I started working with young people doing out of school time based initiatives, non-traditional academic settings. I transitioned into more traditional academic settings as I became a teacher, a dean, an administrator, and an adjunct professor. So I basically taught everything from undergrad down to kindergarten. What inspired me to run for office is actually a part-time job that I had working for Tony Payton, who was a former state rep back in maybe 2008, 2009. Come 2010, we watched one of the worst financial crises put us in a position where state government chose to balance the budget on the back of education. And we've seen the biggest cut that we've seen in the history of the Commonwealth. And that's something that we're still suffering from even till today, if you talk to education experts. And so at the end of the day, that's what put the battery in my back nearly 10 years ago. Of course, most folks who know me know I lost my first two races in 2011 and 2015. 2019 was the third time for me. The third time, thank God, was a charm. Sworn in 2020. I'm in my second term on city council. I am the majority whip on city council, so I'm happy to be in leadership this term. And overall, I can, continue to talk for a long time about the issues and the things that we're trying to do as it relates to the city of Philadelphia. But I want to make sure that the dialogue is parallel to the work that you all do. So I do want to thank you for having me this morning. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I definitely wanted to touch on, leadership in council and committees. You mentioned you're now the majority whip. What does the majority whip do? Could you give us a little bit of insight into exactly what that means and what that, and extra responsibilities you have with that?
Sure. So I think, like most things in life, but especially in government, committees and leadership positions are what you make them. And so for me, what I've tried to do as the majority whip on City Council is first and foremost support a lot of the newer members. 12 out of 17 members on City Council currently right now are in one term or less, and so we do have a melting pot of members as it relates to experience as well as representation. It's the most diverse City Council legislative body we've ever seen, and so for me, again, my biggest goal has been a support system, supporting newer members throughout the course of getting a budget passed, throughout the course of them getting bills and legislation passed, and also trying to put myself in a position to be able to recognize what the temperature is of council when it comes to particular legislation that might be controversial. Thank God we haven't seen much of that yet. Hopefully we can continue to put ourselves in a position where we can do most of our negotiations behind the scene. And outside of being the majority whip on City Council, well, for those who don't know, our hierarchy goes council president, majority leader, majority whip, deputy majority whip, minority leader, deputy minority whip. So it would be basically the third ranking person in the legislative branch. Outside of that, to me, which is more important, I am the chair of the education committee. So a lot of times when we talk about things, I'll reference it back to education, public education, because honestly, that's the core of a lot of the issues that we face here in the city of Philadelphia, whether we're talking about the workforce, whether we're talking about issues related to crime, not just homicides, right? Crime, whether we're talking about future-proof in the city of Philadelphia, all of those things start with our schools. And I love being the chair of the education committee, and I still coach high school basketball, and I'm intricately involved in athletics in the city of Philadelphia. I'm also the chair of the legislative oversight committee, and that has put me in a position to really be able to assess government with a fine comb in areas that we feel like are worthy of investigating. And we've done a number of different hearings to look at multiple issues that we're facing. And we look forward to continuing those conversations this fall, looking at things like 2026 preparedness, looking at things like the hit and run epidemic and other issues that we know are systemic problems within the city of Philadelphia. So thank you for that question. That was a very good one. And if anybody wants me to go a little more in depth as it relates to what we do and how we make decisions on a consistent basis, I'm more than willing to continue that conversation.
No, great. And I was definitely going to ask you about some updates for those committees. You kind of touched on them. Is there anything that you would want to dive deeper in on those committee actions?
Yeah, I think what's relevant to the collective that's here today is the advocacy for, construction and building as it relates to facilities, specifically related to the group that we're talking to. Philadelphia right now is looking at over a $6 billion deficit as it relates to infrastructure and facilities issues with our buildings across the city of Philadelphia. Prior to our current mayor, we proposed an initiative to put us in a position to begin significant construction, which requires a collaboration between local government, state government, and the private sector. The appetite is there, and I think that a big thing that this group should be thinking about is what does it look like to provide local opportunity for new development as it relates to the possibility of $6 billion worth of construction happening over the next decade or so. So I think that's relevant to the conversation today that wasn't necessarily discussed. And, you'll continue to hear dialogue and advocacy from me and other members of the Education Committee on City Council as it relates to the facilities crisis. I mean, today is 9/11, and I heard, the moment of silence we had prior to the call, and of course that's appropriate. But if you think about today's date, we've only been in school for a couple of weeks, and we've already had 2 schools evacuated so far this school year for facilities issues not related to the heat. So this is a huge crisis, and I think everybody should be paying attention for a number of different reasons, but particularly this sector, because we want to encourage local procurement opportunities for Philadelphia and surrounding based businesses.
So thank you for that. And that's really important that you brought that up, those 2 evacuations because of the school situation. And I want to bring it back to, you mentioned the budget, right? So 2025 fiscal year budget is out there. What are the top accomplishments or areas of investments within this budget that you're excited about or you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we did with this budget was put the mayor in a position to be able to execute her vision. I think that was the fair thing to do as it relates to this particular budget. And most of the things that the mayor proposed, we tried to support her and her vision as it relates to giving her an opportunity to lead our city in a direction that she sees fit, because that's what the voters of the city of Philadelphia said that they wanted to do. We had a number of different investments as it relates to supporting initiatives across the city of Philadelphia, whether you talk about what we've done to continue to, to continue the turnkey program what we've done as it relates to put money up to try to address some of the issues between renters and landlords, what we've done as it relates to securing support for exemptions as it relates to loop and homestead, and looking for other support systems to keep homeowners intact as we anticipate the increase in real estate taxes. Real estate assessments, not taxes, assessments. I apologize for that. So those are some things I think that's related to this particular industry. Clearly, crime is a big problem in the city of Philadelphia, and we try to invest as much as we can in prevention-based initiatives. I think in the past, we've done a lot of investment with intervention-based initiatives, which of course is important, but it's imperative that we catch young people, especially young people, before they're even committing crimes. And so we appreciate the mayor's year-round school programming, as well as investments in arts and culture, sports-based initiatives, and other programs to put us in a position to make sure young people have positive activities. I think that's something that impacts us all. And we also appreciate the focus on clean and green. I think we've done a great job of putting a better effort forward as it relates to trying to clean up the city, trying to provide people with resources to be able to keep their blocks and their neighborhoods clean themselves, and just to overall promote the idea of changing the culture around trash and cleanliness in the city of Philadelphia, because I think it starts right there. So those are just a few highlights in the budget. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a $6.3 billion budget that we passed, and there were a lot of things that were in this budget that we haven't seen in the past, and we want to give the mayor an opportunity to see how those things come to fruition.
Awesome. I love it. Appreciate it. And the summer's over, right? The recess, you guys are back in session. You touched on a lot of those top of mind things with the budget and all the initiatives, things you're working on in the committee. Those are kind of the expectations, I would assume, for the fall. Is there anything that you guys are worried about, or you're worried, or anything that you're preparing for as far as how to deal with those things that you're setting the expectations for? Any potential pitfalls?
Yeah, it's a lot going on as it relates to the fall. I mean, I can't speak for all members. You've seen a lot of legislation introduced in the first session, which was last week. I introduced a hearing to prepare for 2026 and 2026 preparedness. We think that's an important conversation, especially from a fiscal perspective. Clearly, culture and safety is also important, but for us, revenue is a big part of what we really want to dive into. We're also going to be working with the tax commission that was convened through council to put us in a position to assess where we are with taxes and what we need to do as it relates to going into next year. I got to take a moment to give a huge shout out to one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with, and somebody who helped me as it relates to my position in advocacy for tax relief, and that's Councilmember Alan Dom. I just noticed he was on the call. I would have said hey to him a little earlier, but when Alan was on council, I had an opportunity to serve with him, and there was a coalition of us even then who wanted to see significant tax cuts as it relates to the current structure we have. The pandemic showed us that we don't have a quality tax structure. We lost more revenue than any other major city in the entire country besides Detroit, and that's telling us something right there. So one of the things that we are doing this fall outside of current legislation and hearings is preparing for next year's budget, because we want to work with the commission and try to put ourselves in a position to really do a deep dive as it relates to the future of taxes and tax structure in the city of Philadelphia, and make an aggressive approach next year, trying to put us in a position to attract businesses to come to Philadelphia, to grow their business in Philadelphia, and of course, stay in the city of Philadelphia. We haven't necessarily done a good job of that. Coming out the pandemic, we recognize that our surrounding suburbs have been extremely aggressive and competitive as it relates to giving businesses opportunities that don't necessarily need Philadelphia foot traffic. So that's something that's definitely on our radar. We want to figure out what can we do ahead of a looming deficit to try to attract more businesses, keep more businesses, and grow more businesses in the city of Philadelphia.
No, I appreciate you connecting the dots there. What happens is we hear about these things, taxes, the assessments, even some of the stuff you mentioned being introduced now with the extension for filing for homestead and things like that. People don't often realize what we went through during that pandemic and what's the why behind it all. So thank you for, looping that in and making sure people understand, especially our members, and hopefully we can convey that to the residents out there that we deal with. Let's touch on housing affordability. if you don't mind. So Mayor Parker has a goal of 30,000 new or rehabbed affordable, attainable housing units. You know, how is city council going to play a role in that? And how are they going to help how are they going to help the mayor achieve that? And are there any legislative proposals out there right now or being talked about to help increase the housing inventory?
I mean, again, that's the mayor's vision. And so for us, I think what we've done to invest in that particular initiative is the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative. And I think what we've done with the Turnkey program and to see that to start to come to fruition, at some point, we're going to examine those numbers and see how effective it's been as it relates to our accuracy with giving actual Philadelphia citizens an opportunity to earn a home. That initiative was through council. I was proud to be a part of that effort to vote for that. And I think right now we're in limbo like you are to see what direction the mayor wants to go in as it relates to developing the housing that she advocated for in the campaign trail. It hasn't been any significant legislation to show what direction we want to go in outside of initiatives that started before this administration. But that's why we try to have these conversations with you so that when those opportunities present themselves, we can circle back around and be able to say, this is where we are with this effort and this is how it could be beneficial to the collective. So I wouldn't say that there's any new updates or any new information as it relates to where we are. What are we, 10 months into the calendar year, almost 9 months into the calendar year. But if that changes throughout the course of our work this fall, myself, my team, we would be more than willing to come back, convene a conversation and talk about what that vision is and discuss pros and cons. So you can help us inform what we should be advocating for, how we should be fighting for affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia. So it's not necessarily something that I'm at the forefront of as a council member at large, but I do have a vote. I am in leadership, and I do like to make responsible decisions that's in the best interest of all Philadelphians.
Great, thank you. And you brought up something that, I usually tie in towards the end, but great timing with it, just open dialogue. We consider ourselves, pretty active in our advocacy for home ownership for all. It builds generational wealth, increasing minority home ownership rates within our city is part of our strategic plan. One of the ways that we would like to be a part of that is through open dialogue with our council members, and, having a seat at the table when those conversations come up so we can help inform from our perspective council members so that they have just a greater perspective on how things may or may not affect what's being proposed, the actual numbers. So appreciate that opportunity to continue that relationship with you. With that, the interest rate, rising, talk about that coming down hopefully this month on the federal side, but the inflation, the limited inventory, anything city council can do to help expand access to maintaining home ownership. And you've been touching on a couple of the programs and we're going to talk about them, but anything else that you think that, council is working on there?
I mean, I think we've done a lot. I mean, Philadelphia is one of the cities that actually does more to protect homeowners than any other major city in the entire country. And when we have the revenue, we've shown that we're willing to invest in first-time homeowners with grant programs to that capacity. So that appetite is there. It's always going to be there. As it relates to looking at issues around inflation and things of that capacity, clearly that's much more on the federal level. But for us, I think it does have an impact on how we think about our local economy. And when I talked about advocating for tax cuts earlier, inflation has put people in a position where they have to be a little more disciplined as it relates to how they're spending money, how we're budgeting, what type of risks we take, and what we decide to embark on or turn the other cheek to. And when people have to make those type of decisions, they also look at the location of their actual business. And that's why I talked earlier about the importance of us lowering taxes for constituents, because that's the only way we as local government can offset the inflation that we're seeing, is saying, if you have to pay more, then maybe you can give us a little less. And in turn, we're hoping to attract more people to the table, which will put us in a position where it'll overall grow the pie. It will take some time to be able to do it. But if we're not having that conversation now, if we're not thinking about those things now, how are we preparing for the future? The pandemic taught most of us that we can work from anywhere. I mean, all of us are different places right now, all across the region. And Yet we've convened together this morning, and we're an example of how people can work from everywhere. So we recognize that as government, we are trying our best to be competitive with our local suburbs, because that's what we have to look at first and foremost, outside of other major cities in the entire country. And we know that the inflation is definitely hitting people. I think part of that also is the national narrative around the presidential race as well too. That's a big part of this particular conversation. And I think the decision that's made in November is going to determine what risk local government can take, what direction we can go in, or essentially can't go in. And I don't think people realize how important it is that the federal government invest in local government. And over the last couple of years, while we have seen inflation, because the federal government has chosen to invest in local government, it's given us an opportunity to have programs and incentives and other things to try to offset that. If we move into a direction that doesn't invest in local government, we will not be in a position to cut taxes next year.
Yeah. And you mentioned it a couple of times, turn the key program, homestead loop, other assessment relief programs that are being worked on, and, continue to help that homeowner, right? And I thought you said it very well. Also, some of these things are still in the process of being assessed, right? The mayor's goals and how that's going to come to fruition. Any talk about the transfer tax? It's one of the highest, in the state, and it really affects those first-time home buyers trying to enter that market. Has there been any conversation there about that you're hearing?
No. Hopefully that's something that the tax commission examines and explores and assesses and lets us know what recommendation they have and what we should do as it relates to council. I've been focused on specifically the bird tax. Outside of myself, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson has looked at the wage tax, and that's been the depth of the conversation thus far, because we feel like that those are the taxes that can touch all businesses and all industries. At the end of the day, if the tax commission comes back and recommend that we look at things like use of occupancy or the transfer tax or other taxes that's unique to the Philadelphia tax structure, we definitely will explore that recommendation and try our best to be more attractive to all industries. So at the end of the day, while there hasn't been any dialogue about it thus far, it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily on the table, especially if groups like this is going to advocate for it and talk about it from an economic perspective and communicate how it could be both beneficial to the industry as well as to the city overall.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And we've been, I've been trying to stay in that residential lane, but you touched on that with the use and occupancy. You talked about some of the commercial, the suburbs, looking at some of those commercial opportunities where it hasn't been as friendly in the city recently. Besides some of the things that have already been spoken about, anything else we could look to help you with from our perspective from advocacy, but anything new that's being talked about in, helping new businesses, helping grow that commercial sector in the city, because that's jobs, that's income for our residents, that's going to parlay into, more opportunities for that housing as well. What do you see on that horizon?
I mean, I think when you're talking about that horizon, I think one thing that the mayor has made a priority, and we're excited to see how it unveils itself, is just making government a little more accessible and getting rid of some of the red tape to start different businesses, right? And so when we're talking about businesses that actually need the foot traffic as well as businesses that don't, a lot of times the complaint that we get is that local government is just too difficult to deal with. And I personally have had experiences, my staff have had experiences working with constituents, and we do agree with that approach. In the past, we've talked to the Commerce Department about just changing the website as it relates to what people go to and how people search the different licenses that they need in the city. They took that recommendation and they did that. And that was a win for us in my first term. And we continue to work with the Commerce Department to look at a number of different things. We're happy to have helped create the first nighttime economy position that's in the Commerce Department, where we've been working with the nighttime industry to figure out how do we regulate and make sure things are done in the up and up, but also what can we do to expand and provide more opportunities for local businesses to be able to operate in the evening, generate revenue in the evening, and provide some level of entertainment and culture that's done in a safe and responsible way. This has been an ongoing thought for us, and we're always going to be open to that dialogue. The nighttime economy position wasn't an idea that I had. It was in collaboration with a task force that we started during COVID to help think about how do we improve the arts and culture industry coming out of some of the issues that we were facing. So at the end of the day, we've shown that we're willing to be creative and think long term as it relates to investing in businesses in Philadelphia-based entrepreneurs. And overall, most of the things that we've implemented and recommendations that we've had started with conversations just like these. So whether it was the grant program to support local artists in the city, whether it was the nighttime economy position to figure out how do we have a thriving nighttime economy, whether it was changing the website that we use for local businesses to navigate, we want to continue to try to find ways to get rid of red tape, to make government more accessible and effective, and work in collaboration with the private sector to improve what industries look like thriving here in the city of Philadelphia. So that's our goal. Collaboration is really, really important to me. And we're here for the long term to really see systemic change.
Great. So it's amazing. It's like I queued you up. You keep going to the next topic right into your comments. So I appreciate that. But no, you said, for the future. So one of the questions, I like to ask, especially someone who is articulate about your vision for all that you see, and I really appreciate that, is, where do you see our city, in 2 to 5 years? What's your hopes and dreams for, in your role, but for the city in general too?
Give me. So I would say, that's a tough question. I would have liked to have gotten that one ahead of time so I can give you like bullet points. That's at me. Off the top of my head, first and foremost, I would like to see us implementing facilities playing around schools. That puts us in a position to build new buildings based on the shift in population as well as the physical condition of other buildings. And I would like to see 50% of those procurement opportunities go to Philadelphia-based businesses. I passed a bill called Keep It Local coming out of the pandemic that basically said the city of Philadelphia will provide, at the time it was 40% of all contractual opportunities to Philadelphia-based businesses. Since then, we've increased that number up to 51% under the previous administration. So if we can get other partners like the school district, the parking authority, and other industries who have these large procurement opportunities to invest in Philadelphia-based businesses, not only would I see a construction plan as it relates to new buildings, I would see all business sectors following our Keep It Local guidelines and putting us in a position where 50% of all procurement opportunities go to Philadelphia-based businesses. I would also see more businesses located in the city of Philadelphia based on tax cuts that we've done to attract them, to say that, you don't have to be in our local suburbs to operate in a way that's fiscally responsible for your bottom dollar. We recognize that things have changed and we want to essentially see you here. The city would be cleaner, crime would be down, and we would see more public-private partnerships to solve some of the problems that we have in the city of Philadelphia. Last but not least, we will be coming off of an amazing performance in 2026 where we put on for the world to see how amazing our city is, whether it's the World Cup, Major League Baseball All-Star Game, or just celebrating the birthday of the country. I would like to see a Philadelphia where we're recognized across the world, similar to what Atlanta was able to do after the Olympics, what we've seen from other cities after they are on a world stage, including Philadelphia when we had the Pope come here and the NFL draft and all that. We have that opportunity again. We seized it once before. In 3 to 5 years, I see us thriving, being an even bigger, better city based on what we've been able to do to prepare for the moment and meet the moment.
Well, for feeling like you weren't prepared for that question, you did pretty good. I wasn't trying to trip you up. I was just
No.
I was excited by the things you were saying. I like the way you were bringing it together. So
yeah,
no, okay.
Somebody will be mad at the answer, right? Somebody will say, talk about infrastructure and issues around hit and runs. Yes, I would like to see protected bike lanes across the city of Philadelphia more than we see. It's a lot of issues that we have. And I think because I don't know everybody's individual story, it's hard to touch on the things that everybody cares about. And when you're an at-large member, you recognize the problems are complicated, but we're trying our best to divvy up these issues that we have as it relates to us being a legislative team and try our best to focus on our area of expertise to fill some of the holes and gaps that we have in the city. So if there's a particular industry or issue that I didn't touch on, charge it to my head and not my heart.
No, I like it. I like it. No, really enjoying it. Thank you. So, asked you a lot of questions about what's going on, what you're doing, what council is doing, your relationships, you know, in council with the mayor. Give us an idea, you know, our membership here that's listening, that's going to listen to the recording, you know, what are some of the things you would ask for, you know, a trade association like ours, you know, around home ownership that deals a lot with the residents? What are some of the ways that we could support you and city council and the mayor and, you know, make our city better?
Yeah, I think being a sounding board for ideas is first and foremost, right? At the end of the day, if we were, you know, writing a curriculum for 10th grade math class, I would be an expert. If we were talking about how to build out a K through 12 school or teach at a local university or even run a basketball camp, you know, those are my areas of expertise. And I do have other areas of expertise, but I can assure you that your industry is not one of them. And one of the things that I've been able to put myself in a position to do is surround myself with people who have a better understanding of the industry than I do and work in a collaborative effort. And I think a lot of times what people think is that because we're elected officials, we have all the answers. It's impossible for us to know everything about everything. I'm never going to be an expert in your industry the way you are because you eat, sleep, and breathe it every single day. So your perspective is important. Your advocacy is important. Letting us know how things are working or not working is very important, because without that information and without that context, we don't experience what you experience. So we don't see some of the flaws that exist as it relates to some of the decisions that we make. Every day, we all make important decisions, and sometimes we can all agree that our decisions has ill-advised consequences that we didn't necessarily calculate. Unfortunately for us in government, we have that same problem, but because we can't assess every decision that's made, we can't necessarily see all those ill-advised consequences unless constituents communicate those things to us. So I think being active, being a part of conversations like this, listening to the direction of the city and understanding what we're trying to do, letting us know where we might have turned the wrong direction, letting us know some of the things that we're not thinking about, I think it's more important than what people realize, because I think people, again, sometimes think we have all the answers, but I also think people assume government just doesn't want to work. And I understand that perspective, because sometimes I get frustrated with government myself. So it's respectable, right? And government crawls. It's not like the private sector, right? Like, you guys can cut deals in a day, you know, for what might take you a week, might take us, you know, 90 days. And so just respecting the process and the systems that we have to go through, but also understanding that we are willing to listen and we want to get it right. We have good intentions. We want to get it right. I work with a lot of people in government, and I can honestly say that the majority of those people are actually good people. We might not necessarily agree philosophically on the direction that we need to go in, but they are well-intended folks. And a big part of government is a compromise. So if everybody leaves with something that they want, we feel like we've done our job. That's not always necessarily the case. Sometimes somebody getting too much of what they want is bad for the industry, or could be bad for people. So being present, advocating, paying attention to what's going on, and then sharing your lived experience really matters a lot, especially when we're talking about issues related to the economy, taxes, and financial incentives.
Appreciate that. No, great points. Great points. So let's take a little bit of a lighter mood. All right. What's been your favorite experience so far serving on city council?
That's a good question. Probably just getting sworn in. The first time I got sworn in, the first, you know, I only had one kid at the time. I think that would be my favorite experience, just the emotion of accomplishment, something that took me so long to accomplish. It took me 10 years to get on city council, right? And so, you know, you all are entrepreneurs, hustlers, you know, when you set your mind to a goal and you actually accomplish that goal, how fulfilling it is, not just for you, but for everybody who worked with you on that journey. So I would say getting sworn in.
That's great. That's great. And testament to your determination and, you know, overall grit to get what you wanted, right? To you know, pursue that, and then to come to realization, right? That's only the beginning, right? Now that you're in, you got all this work to do, right? So appreciate all those efforts. anything else that we could do that you would recommend as the association? You touched on a few things, but I love the open dialogue. I'd like to reiterate that what I said earlier, like, you know, our goal here at the association is always to be that sounding board that you mentioned, to give that opportunity, you know, while things are being discussed or potentially being introduced, not after it's voted on, or, you know, it's already, we're trying to fight that uphill battle as to what we see from our perspective as those potential dangers, but would really love the opportunity, as a leader, you know, as a, you know, multiple committee chair, just have that opportunity to have that open dialogue. So, but anything else we could do?
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody should be thinking about 2026. All industries should be trying to figure out exactly how can you benefit and put yourself in a position to be a part of initiatives that put on the city of Philadelphia for the world to see. That's my first recommendation. I would also recommend meeting with all members of the housing committee. I'm not on the housing committee, but that's an important committee as it relates to city council's bills and legislation. Even if you're not on a committee, if you produce a housing bill, it goes through that committee. And I think that sometimes people assume things about elected officials that could or couldn't be true. Making sure that the members of the committee know you exist, making sure that the members of the committee understand your perspective, and making sure that you offer yourself as a resource and welcome them to open dialogue similar to what we're doing right now. I think that's important. Even if it's members you don't agree with, listen, you know, there are folks who disagree with us all the time that make their presence known very loud and clear. And I think that disagreeing with an elected official can be done in a way that's respectful and important. And I would recommend meeting with members of the housing committee. Outside of those two things, that would be, I don't really have any other recommendations, but I'm open to any questions or comments that folks might have for myself and my team.
I appreciate that. I appreciate. Yeah, we're not going to open it up to just an open forum Q&A, just to keep it fluid here for you. And, you know, just appreciate the time. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't ask you about as far as, you know, directives and things that you're working on?
Not really. I think I've touched on a lot of different things. I mean, we're working on a ton of stuff. I had a fundraiser a little while back where we talked about some of the different bills and initiatives that we have coming up. What I will say is that outside of this industry, I'm doing a huge gaming event on Saturday. We touch a lot of different creative economies, and you know, the gaming industry is one of those industries that we want to become more attractive to as it relates to our city. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's growing every day globally. And when we look at the local economy, we have some things that we're known for: our eds, meds, and beds. Clearly, we see a lot of attraction with biotech stuff as well. What does it look like to add gaming to that list? And so this Saturday at Broad Spring Garden, we will be having over 600 gamers who've already registered for this event. And, you know, this year the event is amazing, but we are looking for partners in the future because we want to move the event to the convention center by the time 2026 comes around. Hopefully next year we can accomplish it, and then we can be established as one of the signature events in the city by the time 2026 comes around. So as people are touring Philadelphia, gaming can be one of the things that's attracting people to the city as well, too. So that's an event that's taking place this Saturday. Clearly, it's a little late to partner with us this year, but we would love to partner with folks in the future because that's an important initiative. On a personal level, I do a free camp every summer. So last couple weeks, I was doing a free camp. I had about 190 young people sign up. 150, 160 actually showed up. We provided free programming for young people the last 2 weeks of August. We do that every year because most young people go to public schools. Free summer programming ends before school starts, and we try to be that free gap to provide programming for young people. So that's my favorite time of year. I take a couple weeks off for city council. All of my staff reports to camp every single day, and we kind of get our hands dirty with some young people, and that's our way of kind of you know, getting out of City Hall a little bit, but also assessing if we're doing a good job or not, right? Like at the end of the day, the young people that we service during those 2 weeks are young people who can give us a good pulse as it relates to what's going on in the city, how they see local government, and what we need to do to improve the quality of life of them and their parents. So Just a few things I just wanted to add to the conversation. And again, thank you everybody for allowing me to join you for coffee this morning. Just for the record, I don't drink coffee. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. Appreciate your time. It looks like one of the questions was answered about the event. Looks like they got that in the chat from one of your staffers. So really appreciate that. And, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, but thank you for all you've done for our city to date and all you're going to continue to do. And again, we really look to be that voice and sounding board for you. And, feel free to reach out. I know you don't always council members don't always deal with association members. You guys deal with our staff a lot. We've got a great staff and Matt and Brittany. So Brittany's usually the one in City Hall the most, but Matt is there as well at times. So feel free to reach out to them at any time. But really, again, just a very large, sincere thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I seen somebody in the chat feature real quick. Just the kid name is Isaiah Thomas and Chris was summer camp. So
Awesome.
That's every year. I put it on social media, send email blasts out. It's always amazing. But my staff is putting contact information in the chat feature if folks have any questions or want to follow up. If there's more information we can provide, we're definitely here, and we appreciate the opportunity. And yes, let's stay engaged. Let's continue the dialogue. And if a bill comes up or some legislation comes up and we didn't see it coming, and members are allowed to do that. They can introduce whatever they want, whenever they want. Even if it's not my bill, we'll be more than willing to have a conversation and try to assess where we are. You can talk to me about pros and cons, and we can think about what we do moving forward. So that's not a problem. I'm an open door. Just let me know where it's going to be, and I'll make sure I have the right staff on board with me. So if you have a question I can't answer, I don't mind saying I don't know, and
right,
we have a team.
Awesome. All right, thank you. And I'm going to hand it back over to Matt for just some closing remarks. Matt, thank you. Thank you, Council.
No, you're going to hand it to me.
Oh, Brittany, I'm sorry.
Hey, thank you again so much, Councilman Thomas. Thank you, Max and Dom, for helping to coordinate this. And like Chris said, we're open as well. Anytime you have questions about anything related to housing, real estate, commercial, residential, even the rental space, I can see we have at least 8 of our members on the call today who are, I think, landlords and or property managers. So we're always happy to, be a resource in that space as well. But yes, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.